The Velcrin neck is optimized for 0.3 g gravity, Dr. Isol explained. The council chamber was packed when Minji was brought in for the verdict. It seemed like every student at the academy had found a way to attend, along with professors, staff, and outside observers. News of the incident had spread throughout the local systems. A human had killed a Velcrin with her bare hands while sitting down. The story was too dramatic to ignore. Minji stood in the center of the floor, flanked by security guards. She had spent the 3 days of deliberation in complete isolation, with nothing to do but think about what she had done. No amount of thinking made it better. Tarek was dead. Nothing would change that. The head counselor's crystalline form pulsed with light as it began to speak. This council has reviewed all evidence, heard all testimony, and consulted with experts in multiple fields of law and xenobiology. We have reached a decision. The chamber fell silent. Minji could hear her own heartbeat in her ears. First, let us address the charge of premeditated murder. The evidence does not support this charge. The speed of the response, the circumstances leading to the incident, and expert testimony all indicate this was a reflexive defensive action, not a planned killing. The charge of premeditated murder is dismissed. Tarek's parents made sounds of protest, but the head counselor continued. However, a death has occurred. Regardless of intent, Miss Minji's actions directly resulted in the death of another student. We must therefore consider whether this constitutes manslaughter, negligent homicide, or justifiable self-defense. The display activated again, showing the key moments of the incident from multiple angles. The evidence shows a clear pattern of harassment and escalation over several weeks. The deceased, Tarek, engaged in behavior that any reasonable observer would classify as bullying and intimidation. On the day of the incident, he committed assault by pouring a chemical substance on Miss Minji, and then physically grabbing her in a manner that caused pain and posed a perceived threat. Perceived threat? Tarek's father shouted. She killed him in less than a second. Who was really the threat? An important question, the head counselor acknowledged, and one we have considered carefully. Dr. Isul's testimony established that Miss Minji possessed the capability to cause harm throughout her time at this academy. Yet in months of attendance, she never once used that capability aggressively. She endured harassment, property destruction, and public humiliation without responding violently. This demonstrates clear restraint and control. One of the other counselors, a floating entity made of light, spoke up. We must also consider the context of relative threat assessment. To Velcrin eyes, Tarek was clearly the stronger party. He was larger, armored, clawed, and male. Miss Minji appeared small, unarmored, and vulnerable. Tarek believed he was in a position of strength. He believed he could assault her without consequence. He was wrong, another counselor added, but that wrongness does not negate his action. He initiated physical violence against someone he believed to be weaker. That is the behavior of a bully and an aggressor. My son made a mistake, Tarek's mother said, her voice breaking. He was young and foolish, but does that mistake deserve a death sentence? No, the head counselor said simply. It does not, but neither does being different and from a dangerous world deserve months of torment. Both parties made errors. One paid with his life, the other must live with having taken it. Minji felt tears running down her face. She hadn't cried since the incident, but hearing it laid out like this broke something inside her. The council's finding is as follows, the head counselor declared. Miss Minji's actions constitute justifiable self-defense under extreme circumstances. The death of Tarek is ruled accidental but unavoidable, given the combination of factors including physical assault, instinctive defensive response, species strength differential, and environmental conditions. No criminal charges will be filed. The chamber erupted in noise. Some beings cheered. Others shouted in anger. Tarek's parents stood and left, their grief and fury radiating from them like heat. However, the head counselor continued, waiting for silence. This incident has revealed serious flaws in our academy's protocols. We were not adequately prepared to integrate a Deathworld species into our population. We failed Miss Minji by not providing appropriate support and monitoring. We failed Tarek by not intervening in his escalating harassment. We failed all students by not recognizing and addressing the danger before it became fatal. The head counselor's form pulsed brighter. Therefore, the following changes will be implemented immediately. First, all Deathworld species will be provided with species-specific support staff and regular psychological counseling. Second, Anti-harassment protocols will be strengthened and enforcement increased. Third, mandatory education on Deathworld species and their capabilities will be added to the core curriculum. Fourth, gravity settings in personal quarters will be individually adjustable to homeworld specifications. And fifth, any student who engages in physical assault of another student will face immediate expulsion, regardless of family connections or political influence. These announcements caused another wave of reaction. Professor Bora, the elderly crystalline being who had mentored Minji, stood up. "Head counselor, may I speak?" she asked. "Proceed, Professor Bora." "I have taught at this academy for 60 years, Bora said, her voice carrying the weight of age and authority. "I have seen thousands of students from hundreds of worlds. Each brings their own strengths and challenges. But what happened here was not just a failure of protocol. It was a failure of community. We allowed a culture of bullying to exist. We looked away when it was convenient. We assumed that silence meant acceptance. We forgot that different does not mean lesser." She turned to look directly at Minji. "This young woman came to us seeking knowledge. She came with hope and determination. She followed our rules, excelled in her studies, and tried to fit into a society that was never designed for her. She asked for nothing except to be left alone to learn. And we failed her." Bora's form shifted colors, showing emotion in her species' way. "I have reviewed her academic work. It is exceptional. Her understanding of complex theories, her problem-solving abilities, her dedication to learning, all of this is outstanding. She deserves to be here. She earned her place through merit, not charity. And if we allow this incident to drive her away, we prove that we are not truly a place of higher learning. We are just another closed society that fears what it doesn't understand." The professor's words hung in the air. Finally, the head counselor spoke again. "Miss Minji, you are cleared of all charges and free to return to your studies if you choose. However, we understand if you prefer to withdraw and return to Earth. The choice is yours." Minji stood there, feeling the weight of hundreds of eyes on her. Return to Earth? Part of her wanted nothing more. To feel real gravity again, to breathe thick air, to be surrounded by people who understood her without explanation. But another part of her, the part that had fought so hard to get here, rebelled against that idea. If she left now, what would it mean? That Deathworld species couldn't integrate? That humans were too dangerous for civilized society? That bullies like Tarek could drive away anyone different? "I want to stay," she said quietly. Then louder, "I want to continue my studies. I want to finish what I started." The head counselor's form pulsed with what might have been approval. "Then you will stay. This session is concluded." As the chamber emptied, various beings approached Minji. Some offered sympathy. Some offered support. Others just wanted to stare at the human who had killed a Velcrin with her bare hands. Vorin approached last after most others had left. The large Velcrin looked diminished somehow, his scales dull. He stopped several feet away, careful not to get too close. "I want you to know," he said slowly, "that I understand now. What you are, what we did to you. Tarek was my friend, but he was wrong. We were all wrong." "I'm sorry about your friend," Minji said, and meant it. "In Velcrin culture, strength is everything," Vorin continued. "The strong lead. The weak follow. It's our way. But we measured strength by the wrong standards. We saw your size and thought you weak. We didn't see what was underneath." He performed a gesture that her translator identified as a sign of respect among Velcrin. "You defeated our strongest in single combat. By our laws, that earns recognition. I cannot be your friend, the loss is too fresh. But I will ensure no Velcrin troubles you again. You have earned that much." After Vorin left, Hyun rushed over and pulled Minji into a careful hug. His species wasn't usually tactile, but he made an exception. "I was so worried," he said. "I thought they would take you away." "So did I," Minji admitted. "For what it's worth, I never feared you," Hyun said. "I always knew you were holding back. I just didn't know how much." Diyun approached more cautiously, her compound eyes reflecting the light in fractured patterns. "I'm glad you're staying. The galaxy needs more people who are both strong and kind. Those two qualities rarely exist together." Over the following days, life at the academy slowly returned to normal, though nothing was quite the same. Workers installed new gravity generators in the dormitory rooms, allowing each student to set their own comfortable level. Minji could finally sleep in proper Earth gravity. The difference was incredible. The next morning arrived without Minji having slept. She sat on the edge of the bed staring at the wall, replaying the moment over and over. Each time she tried to see where she could have done something different. Each time she reached the same conclusion. The moment Tarek grabbed her, there was no other path. Commander Yuna arrived early with a simple breakfast and clean clothes. The commander's tentacles moved with practiced efficiency as she set everything down. "The council will convene in 3 hours," Yuna said. "You'll be permitted to speak in your own defense. There will be witnesses, and there will be someone from Tarek's family. What happens if they find me guilty?" Minji asked. "That depends on the charge. Murder carries different penalties based on intent and circumstances. At minimum, expulsion and deportation. At maximum..." Yuna trailed off, but her meaning was clear. After Yuna left, Minji cleaned herself up and ate the food even though she had no appetite. She needed her strength. Whatever came next, she needed to face it properly. The council chamber was a large circular room with seats arranged in tiers. The counselors sat in the upper levels, representing different species and different legal traditions. The lower floor was for the accused and witnesses. Security was heavy. At least 20 armed guards lined the walls, all of them watching Minji. As she was led to her seat, she saw others gathering. Vorin and Tarek's other friends sat on one side, their scales pale with shock. Hyun was there too, his large eyes filled with worry. Dawn had come, her antennae constantly moving. There were professors, other students, and several beings she didn't recognize. On the opposite side of the room sat an older Velcrin couple. The female scales were silver with age, and the male was missing one arm. Both wore expensive clothing and expressions of absolute fury. Tarek's parents. The head counselor was a being that looked like a floating crystal formation. When it spoke, its voice resonated through the chamber like music. This council convenes to investigate the death of student Tarek and to determine responsibility and consequences. We will hear testimony, review evidence, and render judgment according to galactic law. Miss Minji, you stand accused of causing this death. How do you answer? Minji stood. I caused his death. That is fact. But I did not intend murder. It was self-defense. Self-defense, Tarek's mother spat, her translator making her words harsh. You killed my son while sitting in a chair. You didn't even look at him. That is not self-defense. That is assassination. Let us examine the evidence before drawing conclusions, the head counselor said calmly. Commander Yuna, present your findings. Yuna moved to the center of the floor. A holographic display activated, showing multiple camera angles of the assembly hall. The council watched in silence as weeks of footage played in fast motion. Every incident of harassment was documented. The knocked datapad, the blocked corridors, the whispered insults. It was all there, recorded and time-stamped. Then the footage slowed to show the final assembly. Every camera angle caught the moment. The liquid being poured, Tarek leaning in close, his hand reaching out and grabbing Minji's shoulder. Her reaction too fast to follow in real time. The snap. The collapse. We've had the footage analyzed by motion specialists, Yuna said. The entire sequence from grab to death took 0.7 seconds. That's faster than most species can even perceive a threat, let alone react to one. Proving it was premeditated, Tarek's father argued. No one moves that fast by accident. She planned this. She waited for her moment. Actually, said a new voice, that speed proves the opposite. Everyone turned to look at the speaker. It was a being that Minji didn't recognize, covered in crystalline structures that refracted light into rainbows. The translator identified her as Dr. Isul, a xenobiologist specializing in Deathworld species. I have been asked by the council to provide expert testimony on human biology and behavior, Dr. Isul said. May I approach? The head counselor gestured permission. Dr. Isul moved to the center, and the holographic display changed to show detailed scans of human anatomy. Let me be very clear about what we're dealing with, Dr. Isul began. Humans are from a Class 12 Deathworld. To put that in perspective, only 3 known worlds in the entire galaxy are more dangerous. Humans evolved under conditions that most species would consider a death sentence. The display showed Earth rotating slowly. Continents were highlighted with danger markers. Hurricanes, earthquakes, tsunamis, temperature extremes. The list went on and on. One full gravity, Dr. Isul continued. Most species in this room experience 0.3 to 0.5 gravity as comfortable. Humans evolved in conditions more than double that. Their bones are 4 times denser than galactic average. Their muscle fibers are compressed and reinforced. They have redundant organs. Their immune systems wage constant war against microscopic threats. They are, in every measurable way, built for survival in extreme conditions. The display changed to show a comparison between human and Velcrin skeletons. Even Tarek's parents looked shocked at the density difference. Now, let's talk about what happens when you take a human adapted for 1G and place them in 0.4G station gravity. Dr. Isol said. Their effective strength is multiplied. A human woman like Miss Minji, who would be considered average strength on Earth, becomes extraordinarily powerful in this environment. Then she should have been banned from attending, Tarek's mother said. If she's so dangerous, why was she allowed here? Because danger is not the same as hostility, Dr. Isol replied. A Velcrin is dangerous. Your son was dangerous. He was tall, armored, clawed, and trained in combat. But we don't ban Velcrin from attending the academy because danger is not the same as being a threat. Miss Minji has been here for months without incident because she controlled herself. Until she decided to murder my son, Tarek's father growled. Let me address the specific incident, Dr. Isol said. What you saw in that footage was not a planned attack. It was a reflexive response to a perceived threat. Humans have a very specific set of evolved responses to danger. When grabbed from behind, especially in a vulnerable position while seated, human neurology triggers immediate defensive action. The display changed again, showing neural pathways lighting up in response to stimuli. This isn't conscious thought, Dr. Isol explained. This is millions of years of evolution responding to ambush predators. On Earth, being grabbed from behind often meant death. The survivors were those who could react fast enough, violently enough to break free. That instinct is hardwired into every human brain. Are you saying she couldn't control it? The head counselor asked. I'm saying the response time was too fast for conscious decision-making, Dr. Isol replied. For 7 seconds from stimulus to action, the human brain takes 0.25 seconds just to process visual information. Her body was moving before she could think about it. This is called an instinctive defensive response. But the force used, another counselor interjected. Surely she could have controlled that. In 1G Earth gravity, perhaps. Her training would have taught her to pull her punches, to moderate her strength. But here, in 0.4G, the force calculations are different. What feels like a moderate pull on Earth becomes devastating here. She grabbed and yanked with what her muscle memory told her was appropriate force. She didn't account for the low gravity multiplier. Minji listened to all of this with growing horror. Dr. Isol was explaining what she was, but also what she had done. Every word was accurate, but hearing it laid out so clinically made it real in a way it hadn't been before. I have reviewed Miss Minji's training records from Earth, Dr. Isol continued. She completed a 6-month intensive course on low-gravity adaptation and strength moderation. She was taught to move carefully, to always hold back, to never use full strength. Her instructors rated her as excellent in all areas. She followed protocol perfectly. Until she didn't, Tarek's mother said bitterly. Until she was assaulted, Hyun's voice rang out. The Nariot had stood up, his body trembling with emotion. I'm sorry, but I can't stay quiet. I watched what they did to her for weeks. Tarek and his friends tormented her every day. They destroyed her property, blocked her path, insulted her constantly. And she endured it all without complaint because she didn't want to cause trouble. That's irrelevant, Tarek's father said. Words aren't violence. He grabbed her, Hyun insisted. He poured chemicals on her and then physically grabbed her. That's assault by any legal definition. She had every right to defend herself. By killing him? Tarek's mother's voice broke. She could have pushed him away. She could have called for help. She could have done anything except kill him. Could she? Dr. Isul asked quietly. Let me show you something else. The holographic display changed to show slow-motion footage of the incident. Frame by frame, it showed Tarek's hand gripping Minji's shoulder, claws digging into fabric and skin, then Minji's hand moving up, grabbing his wrist. The twist, the pull, the angle of force. Look at the biomechanics, Dr. Isul said. The angle of pull, combined with Tarek's own body weight and the low gravity, created a rotational force on the neck. Now let me show you Velcrin neck structure. Another image appeared showing the Velcrin spine and neck. The vertebrae were lighter, adapted for low gravity. The neck was long and flexible, perfect for their native environment. The dean was speaking about academic excellence and the importance of cross-species cooperation. Her words were probably inspiring, but Minji couldn't hear them over the blood rushing in her ears. Behind her, Tarek and his friends continued their whispered assault. "I heard humans still kill each other on their planet," one of them said. "Actual murder. Over money or feelings or stupid reasons. Primitives," another agreed. "They probably eat their own dead." "No, I read they burn them or bury them," Vorin said. Wasteful and disgusting. Minji tried to focus on her breathing. In through the nose, out through the mouth. This was a test. If she reacted, she lost. If she stood up and confronted them, she would be the problem. The violent human. The Deathworld savage who couldn't control her emotions. She had been so careful for so long. Months of swallowing her pride, ignoring the insults, pretending not to notice when they made her life difficult, all because she knew that one slip would confirm every fear the galaxy had about her species. "Look at its hands," Tarek said. Louder now. "Soft little things. No claws at all." "What kind of predator has no claws?" "It's not a predator," Vorian replied. "It's prey that got smart. Lucky evolutionary accident. Probably tastes terrible too," Tarek continued. "All that soft meat would be full of fear hormones. Spoiled." Something cold touched the back of Minji's neck. She froze. Liquid was running down inside her uniform, cold and smelling strange. Chemical and sharp. Tarek had poured something on her. Around her, she heard a few gasps from nearby students who had noticed. But no one said anything. No one called for a professor. They all just watched, waiting to see what would happen. Minji closed her eyes. The liquid was uncomfortable but not painful. Probably some Velcrin drink that they found amusing to waste. Just another humiliation. She could endure this too. She could go back to her room, change uniforms, wash off. This wasn't worth fighting over. "Your species shouldn't exist," Tarek hissed, leaning forward so his mouth was next to her ear. "Your evolutionary mistakes who got lucky. When I'm done with you, they'll send you back to your gravity prison planet where you belong. You'll spend the rest of your pathetic life crawling on that backwards rock, and the galaxy will forget you ever tried to reach for the stars." Minji's hands were shaking now, not from fear, from the effort of staying still. Every muscle in her body was tense, ready to move. Her heart rate had increased. Adrenaline was flooding her system. Her body was preparing for violence whether she wanted it to or not. "You don't belong here," Tarek continued, his voice filled with contempt. "You don't belong anywhere civilized. You're just animals that learn to talk." And then he made his final mistake. He reached forward and grabbed Minji's shoulder, his clawed hand digging through her uniform into her skin. The grip was hard, meant to hurt. He wanted to leave marks. He wanted to physically hurt her and see if she would finally break. The moment his hand touched her, something inside Minji snapped. Not her control, her patience. The dam that had been holding back months of rage and frustration collapsed all at once. And underneath it all was something far older than civilization, something that remembered being hunted and learning to hunt back. She didn't think. Thinking was too slow. Her body moved on instinct, on training that had been drilled into her before she left Earth. If someone grabs you from behind, these were the moves. This was how you break free. This was how you survive. Her hand shot up and back, finding Tarek's arm with perfect precision. She wrapped her fingers around his wrist, feeling the scales under her grip. In the low gravity, her Earth-built muscles were more than 4 times as effective. What would have been a firm grip on Earth became a vice here. She yanked forward and twisted at the same time, using the leverage of the chair for support. Tarek was pulled forward by his own arm, his body following the sudden motion. At the same time, Minji twisted her torso and added a sideways pull, changing the angle of force. Physics did the rest. Tarek's neck simply couldn't handle the rotational force combined with his own body weight. Suddenly thrown in a direction it wasn't prepared for. There was a crack. Clear. Final. The sound echoed in the sudden silence of the assembly hall. Tarek's body went limp instantly. His hand released her shoulder and his arm fell away. The weight of him slumped back into his seat, head lolling at an angle that was immediately obviously wrong. The entire motion had taken less than a second, from grab to snap to release. It was over before most people even realized something had happened. Then the screaming started. Vorin was the first to react, shouting in his native language. The translator struggled to keep up, but the panic was clear. Other students began to stand, to back away, to point. The dean stopped mid-sentence and looked around in confusion. Minji sat perfectly still. She hadn't stood up. She hadn't turned around. She was facing forward exactly as she had been the entire assembly. Her hands were in her lap now, clasped together. They weren't shaking anymore. Behind her, Tarek's friends were in chaos. Someone was trying to find a pulse. Someone else was screaming for medical help. Vorin kept saying the same thing over and over in Velkrin, something that translated roughly to impossible or can't be. Security arrived within seconds. They were a mixed species team, wearing light armor and carrying stun weapons. They spread out quickly, trying to understand what had happened. One of them approached Minji carefully, very carefully, miss, the security officer said. He was from a feline species with whiskers that twitched nervously. I need you to stand up slowly and come with us. Minji nodded and stood. She moved deliberately, keeping her hands visible. Every security officer in the room had their weapons trained on her. She saw their fear. To them, she had just killed someone while sitting down without even turning around. What else might she be capable of? Medical teams rushed past her to get to Tarek. She didn't look back. She knew what they would find. She had felt the break. She knew exactly what she had done. The security team escorted her out of the assembly hall. Students pressed against the walls to let them pass, staring at her with wide eyes. She heard whispers following her down the corridors. Did you see that? She didn't even stand up. It was so fast. I didn't know humans could move like that. They took her to a holding cell in the security wing. It was designed to be comfortable, with a bed and basic facilities, but it was still clearly a cell. The door sealed behind her with a heavy magnetic lock. Minji sat on the bed and looked at her hands. They were steady now. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind a strange numbness. She had killed someone. For the first time in her life, she had taken a life, and it had been so easy, horrifyingly easy. She thought about Tarek's last words. You're just animals that learn to talk. Maybe he had been right. Maybe that's all humans were. Dangerous animals pretending to be civilized. And when pushed hard enough, the pretense fell away. Hours passed. No one came to question her. Through the transparent section of her cell, she could see security officers gathering in groups, talking in low voices. Several times, someone would look her way and quickly look away again. Finally, late into the station's night cycle, a senior officer arrived. She was from a species that resembled Earth's octopi, with tentacles instead of arms and large, intelligent eyes. Her uniform marked her as the head of station security. Miss Minji, the officer said, her translator converting the complex sounds she made into standard language. I am Commander Yuna. I need to ask you some questions about what happened today. All right, Minji said quietly. Did you kill Tarek? Yes, intentionally? Minji paused. That was the question, wasn't it? Had she meant to kill him, or had she just meant to break free? Where was the line between self-defense and murder? He grabbed me from behind, she said finally. I reacted. I didn't think about it. I just moved. We have the entire incident on security footage, Yuna said. We've reviewed it from multiple angles. We've seen the weeks of harassment leading up to this moment. We've seen him pour a chemical substance on you. We've seen him grab you in a manner that could be interpreted as assault. Then you know what happened, Minji said. What I know is that a student is dead, Yuna replied. A large, strong student from a species known for their physical prowess. And he was killed by a human woman who weighs less than half what he did, who didn't even need to stand up to do it. Can you understand why that concerns us? Yes, Minji whispered. It concerns me too. Yuna was quiet for a moment, studying her with those large eyes. Did you know you could kill him that easily? I knew I was strong, Minji admitted. I've always known. They warn us before we leave Earth. They tell us to be careful, that we're more dangerous than we realize in lower gravity. But knowing it and experiencing it are different things. Why didn't you report the harassment? Because I didn't want to be the problem, Minji said. I didn't want to be the violent human that everyone was afraid of. I thought if I just stayed quiet and endured it, eventually it would stop. But it didn't stop, no. It got worse. Yuna nodded slowly. Get some rest, Miss Minji. You'll be formally questioned tomorrow by the station council. I recommend you be completely honest with them. After the commander left, Minji lay down on the bed and stared at the ceiling. She didn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt the snap again. That awful final crack. The weeks that followed established a pattern that Minji came to dread. Tarek and his group seemed to have decided she was their new favorite target. It started small. They would sit near her in the common areas and talk loudly about how humans were barely evolved apes who got lucky. They would block hallways and make her squeeze past them. They would laugh whenever she spoke in class. Minji endured it all in silence. She went to her classes, studied in her room, and avoided confrontation. But the harassment escalated steadily, like a slow-building storm. One day, she arrived at her usual study spot in the library to find her datapad missing. She had left it on the table for just a moment while getting a drink. The librarian, a kind elderly being from a species that looked like walking plants, helped her search. They found it eventually in the trash compactor. The screen was cracked and several files were corrupted. Who would do such a thing? The librarian asked, distressed. Minji knew exactly who, but she had no proof. She thanked the librarian and used her limited credits to repair the datapad. It took nearly a week. During group projects, Tarek's friends would deliberately exclude her or take credit for her work. When she tried to participate, they would talk over her or dismiss her suggestions as stupid. The professors didn't notice, too busy managing dozens of different species with different learning styles and needs. Through it all, Hyun remained her one steady friend. He was gentle and thoughtful, everything the Velkrin were not. He shared his notes when hers were mysteriously deleted. He saved her a seat in classes. He listened when she needed to talk. "Why do they hate you so much?" he asked one day as they sat in the garden area. The plants here were from his homeworld, species that thrived in humid environments. The mist in the air made his skin glisten. "I don't think they hate me specifically," Minji said, watching the water droplets form on the leaves. "I think I'm just different, and difference makes people uncomfortable. They need to prove I'm beneath them." "It's not right," Hyun said firmly. "On my world, we have a saying. The strong current doesn't mock the small fish. It simply flows." Minji smiled at that. "That's beautiful. On Earth, we have a different saying. Still waters run deep. What does that mean? It means that quiet things can be more dangerous than loud things. That you shouldn't judge based on surface appearance." Hyun thought about that for a moment. That seems like a Deathworld saying. "Maybe it is," Minji agreed. As they talked, another student approached. This was Dayun, a member of an insectoid species called the Chitari. She had compound eyes that sparkled with multiple colors and 4 arms that she used with impressive coordination. She was in several of Minji's classes and had always been polite if distant. "May I speak with you?" Dayun asked, her translator converting her clicking speech into standard language. "Of course," Minji said, gesturing to an empty seat. Dayun sat but seemed nervous, her antennae twitching. "I wanted to warn you about something. I've been doing research on human biology for my xenobiology class. I chose Earth as my subject world." "That's nice," Minji said, unsure where this was going. "No, you don't understand," Dayun said urgently. "What I found terrified me. Your species shouldn't exist. The conditions on Earth are impossible. The gravity alone would crush most species. But humans don't just survive it, they thrive in it." Minji shifted uncomfortably. "We adapted over millions of years. Your bones," Dayun continued, pulling up a holographic display from her datapad. "They're 4 times denser than the galactic average. Your muscles are like compressed cables. Your immune system treats your own body like a war zone, constantly fighting invisible enemies. You have redundant organs. Your healing factor is exceptional. You can survive injuries that would kill most species immediately." The hologram showed a human skeleton next to a Velkrin skeleton for comparison. Even Hyun gasped at the difference in bone density. "This is just our normal biology," Minji said quietly. "We don't think of it as special." "That's because you have nothing to compare it to," Daeun replied. "But out here in the galaxy, you're extremely dangerous. In this low gravity, your strength is multiplied. A casual push from you could break bones. A punch could kill. I'm very careful," Minji assured her. "I was trained before I came here. I know my own strength." "I tried to tell Tarek," Daeun said, her voice dropping. "He was in my xenobiology class. I showed him the research. He laughed at me. Called me paranoid. He said humans are weak because they have no natural weapons, no claws or teeth or armor. He's not entirely wrong," Minji said. "We don't have those things." "But you have something worse," Daeun insisted. "You have intelligence combined with the physical capability to back it up. And you have endurance. I read about human hunting techniques on Earth. Persistence predation. You would chase prey for hours, days even, until the animal collapsed from exhaustion. What kind of species does that?" "A hungry one," Minji said with a slight smile. Dayun didn't smile back. Please be careful around Tarek. His pride won't let him back down, and he doesn't understand what you are. After Dayun left, Hyun looked at Minji with new eyes. Is all of that true? About human biology? Yes, Minji admitted. But it doesn't matter. I'm not here to hurt anyone. I'm here to learn. I know, Hyun said softly. But Tarek doesn't know that. And he won't stop until he gets the reaction he wants. Hyun was right. The harassment intensified after that. Tarek seemed to sense that time was running out, that he needed to establish dominance before his own graduation. He became bolder. One day, he deliberately knocked her datapad out of her hands while passing in the corridor. It clattered to the floor, the screen cracking further. Minji bent to pick it up without a word. When she stood, Tarek was standing very close, looming over her with his superior height. Oops, he said with a cruel smile. Clumsy me. His friends laughed from behind him. Other students in the corridor quickly moved away, not wanting to be involved. Minji stepped around him and kept walking. She heard him spit on the floor behind her. Coward, he called after her. Typical prey species behavior. Run away. In another incident, she found her academy uniform torn and shredded in her locker. Someone had accessed it using override codes. Security couldn't trace who, but Minji knew. She requisitioned a new uniform and said nothing. The worst part wasn't the acts themselves. It was the watching. Other students saw what was happening. They knew it was wrong. But no one intervened. No one reported it. The Velkrin had a reputation, and Tarek's family was powerful. Getting involved meant becoming a target yourself. Minji understood their silence. In a way, she was grateful for it. If someone had intervened, she would have felt obligated to defend them. And defending someone might mean using force. Using force might mean revealing what she was capable of. And that would change everything, so she endured. She studied hard, aced her exams, and maintained her careful control. At night, in her quarters with the gravity turned up to Earth normal, she would work out until her muscles burned. She would imagine being home on solid ground in air thick enough to really breathe. She would imagine walking without constantly calculating force and distance. But morning always came, and with it the return to the low-gravity nightmare, where she had to pretend to be weak. The final straw came during a mandatory assembly. These were held monthly, with all students required to attend. Minji took her usual seat in the human section, that single chair that marked her as utterly alone. Hyun was nearby with his people. Dayun was somewhere in the massive crowd, and behind her, with timing that seemed too perfect to be accidental, Tarek and his 4 closest followers took their seats. Minji felt her stomach sink. This wasn't random. He had planned this. The assembly began, but Minji couldn't focus on the speeches. She was too aware of the presence behind her. She could hear them whispering, just loud enough for her to hear, but not loud enough for anyone else to notice. Look at it, Tarek's voice said, sitting there pretending to belong. Pretending to be civilized. Deathworld trash, Vorin added. Vorin was Tarek's second, almost as large and twice as mean. I wonder if it knows how ridiculous it looks. That soft skin, no protection at all. One scratch and it would probably bleed out. Minji's hands gripped the armrests of her chair. She breathed slowly, counting to 10, then 20. This was just words. Words couldn't hurt her. She had survived worse than words. But deep down, in the part of her brain that was still pure mammalian instinct, something old and patient was waking up. Something that remembered what it meant to be prey that became predator. Something that knew exactly how to kill. The transport shuttle's doors opened with a soft hiss, and Minji stepped onto the docking platform of Nexus Academy. She carried a single bag over her shoulder and moved with careful, measured steps. Everything felt wrong here. The air was too thin, like breathing at the top of a mountain. The gravity was light, making her feel like she might float away with each step. She had trained for this, but training and living were different things. Around her, other students moved in clusters, chattering in dozens of languages. Universal translators embedded in their academy badges converted everything to comprehensible speech. Minji heard their whispers as she passed. They weren't being subtle about it. That's the human, someone said. A student with blue skin and 4 arms pointed at her from across the platform. From Earth? The Class 12 Deathworld? Another voice asked, this one belonging to a being covered in soft fur. I heard they have predators that can swallow you whole, a third voice chimed in, and storms that can level entire cities. Minji kept walking. She was used to this by now. During the 3-month journey to the academy, every stop at every station had brought the same reactions. Humans were rare in the galaxy. Earth was infamous. She had read the reports. Out of 10,000 catalogued worlds with intelligent life, only 47 were classified as Class 10 or higher on the danger scale. Earth was Class 12. Only 3 worlds ranked higher, and none of them had developed space travel. The academy itself was beautiful. It was a massive ring station orbiting a yellow star, with transparent sections that showed the cosmos beyond. Gardens filled with alien plants lined the walkways. Water features bubbled and flowed. Though the water moved strangely in the low gravity, everything was designed for comfort and learning. Minji found her assigned quarters in the human section of the dormitory. The room was empty except for her. She was the only human student at Nexus Academy this year. The room had been modified based on specifications sent from Earth. The gravity generator could be adjusted up to 1G in her private space. The air mixture could be enriched. The temperature controls went higher than standard. She unpacked her few belongings and changed into her academy uniform. The material was strange, designed to work for dozens of different body types. On her, it hung a bit loose. She pinned her identification badge to her chest and studied herself in the mirror. She looked ordinary. Brown hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Dark eyes. Average height for a human woman. Nothing about her appearance suggested danger. That was the problem, she thought. Nothing about any human suggested danger to alien eyes. They looked at humans and saw soft skin. No natural weapons, no armor plating. They didn't understand what was underneath. The first day of classes started with an orientation assembly. Minji sat in the designated human section of the Grand Hall, which consisted of a single chair. Around her, thousands of students filled the space, grouped by species and homeworld. The noise was incredible. Hundreds of conversations in dozens of languages created a wall of sound that the translators struggled to parse. She spotted Hyun sitting several rows away with the aquatic species group. The Nereids were beautiful people, with pale skin that seemed to shimmer and large eyes adapted for underwater vision. Hyun noticed her looking and gave a small wave. She nodded back. They had met briefly during processing, one of the few students who had approached her without fear or morbid curiosity. The assembly began with speeches from various professors and administrators. Minji tried to pay attention, but her mind wandered. She was here on a special scholarship, one of the first humans to attend a major galactic university. Earth had only joined the wider community 20 years ago, and there was still so much distrust. She had a responsibility to represent her world well. "Look at it sitting there all alone," a voice said from behind her. The translator identified the language as Velkrin, the Deathworld primitive. Minji didn't turn around. She kept her eyes forward, focusing on the speaker at the podium. "I heard they still have nations that fight wars," another voice added. "Can you imagine? Actually killing each other over resources and ideas. Barbaric," the first voice agreed. "They probably let her in out of pity. Charity case from a backwards world." The voices belonged to a group of Velkrin students. Minji had learned about their species during her preparation. They came from a low-gravity world covered mostly in deserts. They were reptilian in appearance, with scales that acted as natural armor. They stood tall, averaging 7 feet, with sharp claws and impressive physical strength by galactic standards. Their culture valued power and direct confrontation. She could see them in her peripheral vision. 5 of them, all wearing the distinctive red badges that marked them as third-year students. The one speaking the loudest was massive even by Velkrin standards, with dark green scales and a crest of horns along his head. His badge identified him as Tarek. "Maybe we should test it," Tarek said, his voice dropping to a tone that was meant to be threatening. "See if Deathworld trash can actually survive outside its gravity prison." One of his companions laughed nervously. "Tarek, not here. There are professors everywhere." "I'm not doing anything," Tarek replied innocently. "Just talking. They can hear me, right? Or are humans deaf as well as weak?" Minji's hands tightened on her datapad, but she didn't respond. She had been warned about this. Earth's psychologist had prepared her. The galaxy was not a kind place, especially for newcomers. Humans were strange, frightening, and poorly understood. Some species would test her. Some would try to establish dominance. The key was to stay calm, follow the rules, and not give anyone a reason to justify their fears. The assembly ended, and students began filing out. Minji stood carefully, always conscious of her movements in the low gravity. One wrong step and she could jump 10 feet into the air. One careless gesture, and she could hit someone hard enough to hurt them badly. As she walked toward the exit, someone bumped into her hard from behind. She stumbled forward but caught herself. Behind her, she heard Tarek's voice again. "Oops. Didn't see you there, human. You're so small and insignificant," his companions laughed. Minji straightened her uniform and continued walking without looking back. She heard them following her for a few corridors, making comments just loud enough for her to hear. Eventually, they got bored and turned away, their laughter echoing off the metal walls. Hyun caught up with her near the dormitory entrance. His face showed concern, the gills on his neck fluttering with emotion. "I saw what happened," he said quietly. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine," Minji replied. "It's nothing." "That was Tarek," Hyun warned. "He's dangerous. Last year, he put a student in medical care for 3 weeks. His family has connections, so nothing happened to him. You should report this." Minji shook her head. "Report what?" "He bumped into me and said some words. That's not worth making a formal complaint. But if it continues, then I'll handle it," Minji said, trying to sound reassuring. "I've dealt with bullies before. The best thing to do is ignore them. They get bored and move on." Hyun didn't look convinced, but he nodded. "If you need anything, let me know. Not everyone here is like him." "I know," Minji said, and she meant it. "Thank you." That night, alone in her quarters, Minji increased the gravity to Earth normal and did her exercises. Push-ups, sit-ups, squats. Her body sang with relief at feeling proper weight again. She had to stay strong. Space life would weaken her if she wasn't careful. As she worked out, she thought about Tarek and his group. She had seen the way they moved, the casual cruelty in their eyes. They were predators in their own way, used to being the strongest things in any room. They had no idea what she was, what any human was, and she needed to keep it that way. The last thing the galaxy needed was to be afraid of humans. Her job was to be quiet, studious, and harmless, even if it meant swallowing her pride and enduring whatever came next.